I performed my first wedding at the ripe old age of 19, and over the last 2 decades plus, I have helped more couples than I can remember tie the proverbial knot. While I can't offhand recall every wedding over which I've presided, there are some that I can vividly remember. One that I'm sure will make that list of the stand the test of time ceremonies happened just last spring. It was a bit unconventional, which always ends up being my favorite scenario. The couple met while working as servers at the Pearl Diver, a great little tiki bar in East Nashville, and wanted to have their wedding there. They rented the outdoor space, a beautiful little courtyard surrounded by tables, and were surrounded by their closest family and friends as they exchanged I-dos, vows, and rings. It was a really lovely evening. One of the requests the couple made for the ceremony was that I read from 1 Corinthians chapter 13, Paul's famous ode to love. They wanted these words at the forefront of their hearts and minds on that day and always. In case you need a refresher, here are those words. Love is patient. Love is kind. Love is not envious or boastful or arrogant or rude. It does not insist on its own way. It is not irritable. It keeps no record of wrongs. It does not rejoice in wrongdoing, but rejoices in the truth. It bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things. 1 Corinthians chapter 13, verses 4 through 7. It makes sense why couples would want to hear these words on their wedding day. They are poetic, familiar, and describe the kind of love that would, no doubt, create a long, happy, and fulfilling marriage. That being the case, it's no surprise that 1 Corinthians chapter 13 has played a central role in wedding ceremonies for hundreds upon hundreds of years. However, if we go beyond this specific use of this passage with the goal to understand why Paul originally wrote these iconic words and why he wrote them to the Corinthian community, it's important to begin here. Paul was not writing wedding liturgy when he wrote 1 Corinthians chapter 13. Further, if Paul knew that almost 2,000 years after he had written this letter that a group of people called Christians would elevate his writings to the status of sacred scripture, and that one of the primary uses of this specific letter would be during wedding ceremonies, he would be puzzled to say the least. Our engagement with this passage has only been the tip of the iceberg. When we hear chapter 13 in the overall context of 1 Corinthians, a larger image begins to emerge, one that still offers a challenge to the church and to each of us who are part of it today. Before we turn to examine that message, let's talk about what kind of text 1 Corinthians is.